Well, here we are over at the milling machine, and I've got a bit of dirty old steel in there which is about 19mm thick, and we're going to try and make that 18mm thick by just taking a millimetre of the thickness with my favourite fly cutter. It's got 4 points on there, 4 little probably TCT bits in there. Seems to make a bit better finish than the single point fly cutters, so gonna give that a go. Let's see how we do. Don't think I'll go down 1mm in the first pass. Right, not sure where we are for depth at the moment. Soon find out. Oh, not even touching it. No, not touching just yet. File this down a little bit. A bit more. Okay. Should be okay now, hopefully. Should really be using some coolant, but it's only a quick pass. Might have a broken drill bit in that hole. I'm hoping it won't cause too much of a problem. Well, let's see. Turning it off. Now then, what size do we have? We have got 18mm. That'll do. So that should hopefully now be the required width for fitting in these T-slots here, if you can see them. Not sure you can. Oh, yes you can, yes. And I've got to make the part that goes through there 11mm. Strange sizes, but what can you do? Well, I've measured it a bit more accurately, and it's probably a few thou over 18mm, so I'm just going to take another 1/2mm off. So yeah, not too accurate the first time, but we'll give it a second go. I think that's all we need to do. So I better start her up if I can reach. Let's see. Yeah, that's about exactly what we need now. It's nothing too critical. I just don't want it to rattle about too much. Now, of course, when you do milling operations like this and you're taking off a fair bit of chunk, I think I took about an extra 20 thou off there, off the top. You're going to get this burr here that you need to take off. Even though I've got a broken file, you don't need too much effort to take it off. But it will take a few minutes, so I shall put you through that. Well, the height of this block now, or the thickness, is just below 18mm. The second pass that I made, which took about maybe half a mil off, 20 thou, probably wasn't necessary, because now when you put this block in the rotary table over here, there's a little bit of play, but at least we know it'll fit. Now the next thing I've got to sort out with this is just how big the T-bolts are going to be. On the T-nuts, sorry. I've got some pretty awful holes in here from a job I did a long time ago, and I think this steel probably was a bit too tough, slightly too high a carbon content. It's probably EN8 or maybe even EN32, I'm not sure. It's likely to be EN8 because I got it from a lathe manufacturer, and I cleaned them out of a lot of their bits of metal once when they were just starting up doing their show. Fortunately that company now has been liquidated as far as I know, but I got quite a few bits of stock, which are nice. So this is a fairly hard piece of steel. Clearly the drills I was using a long time ago weren't very good. I think I have a broken one in there somewhere, in that end one. Probably slightly more successful with those two holes, but they probably weren't positioned very well. So we've got the right thickness now, we just need the right height, and it looks like what I can do is use this bottom part here for some T-nuts, and of course I used this top half for some T-nuts too. So it's not straightforward because of those holes being there, but we can get at least 4 good ones out of there, no problem, maybe even more. So better get on with it and mark up with a suitable scribe. Right, we're at the 6-inch rotary table. We have our bit of steel that we want to turn into some T-nuts. Now this is about 4 inches long, so if I was to make 4 T-nuts they'd be about 1 inch long. But then that means that you can't get too much range on these, so I may make them slightly smaller than 1 inch long, I'm not sure yet, but we'll see. Now it's a bit awkward having these holes here on opposite sides, because it would be easy if they were in the same line just to cut the top half away or mill it away and just have a nice fresh piece of steel to cut into 4 pieces and get to the right size and not have to worry too much. But I think what we're going to have to do is cut these into 4 equal lengths of about 1 inch long, and maybe then put them all in a straight line. So if we have 4 equal pieces, we can turn these 2 upside down, and so that we can make the holes at the top and then mill the T sections into it, and of course everything that we don't need where the holes are. So that's just an extra little job we have to do that complicates life a bit. But once we have a fresh piece of steel, we'll have to concentrate on what size holes are going to put in for the bolts that come through and tighten down into them. And I've chosen to go ahead with 8mm bolts. I mean, this is too long for the job in hand, but this gives you an idea of the size of the 8mm bolt. Now this width here in the top of the table is only 11mm wide, so you can't have too big a bolt that goes through there, otherwise you'll have not enough material on either side of the T-nut, and every time you can tighten it down it might bunge it out a little bit, and then you might not get your T-nut back out. So I've chosen 8mm because I've got the right tap drill sizes for those. I think that's something around about 7mm, or maybe just under, about 6.5 or 6.8 or something like that. And once I've got those drilled, we can hopefully tap them with a nice sharp 8mm HSS tap, and we'll have 4 nice new T-nuts, and then we can crack on with the job of making the motor plate spigot at 180mm. So yeah, it's just an extra little job we should do. Better crack on with it. Right, so next job is to grab hold of this piece of steel and mount it in my little vise. And of course, I have my little scroll saw table anchored there at the moment, so that's going to have to move. Not the easiest thing to do. Stay. So as you can see, quite light really. Right. Let's see. I think what's the best thing to do? Cut this bit away first, or use that? Yes, we'll use that to grab it all on. I think if we can grab all of the really small part, that should be enough. Should be enough. No idea if the camera's still on that bit of steel. Oh, it is. Right. So next thing to do is find my safety specs. Check. And my ear defenders. Check. Now, it is 12 or 13 degrees out in the garage, so it's probably quite warm, but a nice little tip, so you don't get a nice little shock on your ears. Give your ears a good rub. They're all nice and warm when you put one in. Ah, that's better. Right. And all. There's a bit of a mess in this guy, just have to sort things out. Right, can I see the marks? Not really. I think I'm going to have to put some felt tip on him. This is ridiculous. Okay, well, I've got some black marks on here now, and put the marks on again with the scribe. So I've got a slightly better idea of where I should be cutting. It's a fair distance away from here, but this is quite tight and there's a good ½ of metal being gripped all over there. It's not going to move, certainly with the pressure of the cutting disc. It's quite nice and thin. It's going to get pretty noisy, not for me, because I've got my ear defenders. There's going to be plenty of sparks, I'm sure. I've no idea whether this blade will get through this steel yet. Just have to give it a go. But I'm working to a deadline because apparently I've got some food ready for me. So I suppose I better give it a go. That's another job done. Okay, well, we have all 4 pieces now separated. Now, this edge is the side that we took down first in the milling machine, and this was to get the thickness to 18mm. So as they stand now, these are all the correct thickness to go into the T-slots. But of course these edges here are the ones that the cutting disc went through, and so they could be anywhere. They're not square relative to the sides. So what we're going to have to do is have one side as a reference and cut that flat, and then turn them upside down, put them on a parallel, and do the other side, and then there'll be a standard thickness. Then they'll probably end up somewhere around about 15-16 mil. But that's just going to be the height of the T-nut. But at the moment what we've got to sort out is the length of these, because even though this is not such a bad length, and we could probably put a hole through each one, really I don't really want to worry about these holes here and getting in the way. So even obviously you're not going to see those if they're slided into the T-slot, so you could say, well, just have all the T-nuts like that and put the holes in and be done with it. But the slots are only a certain length, and if you make these too long, you limit how much the T-nut can move in that slot. So really it does as well to actually remove a little bit from these. And we did say that we'd actually drew a line there. I don't think it really shows up too well anymore, but we can take this length down quite easily. We do have a common edge to these, which is this bottom piece, or this bottom line here, and we can stand this on a parallel in the vice jaws, and bit by bit take the ends of these down as the milling cutter progresses further and further down. It's going to take quite a while doing it that way. There is an argument for getting the cutting disc and just lopping off most of the top, and just having less passes to go through. But even if we do that, we've still got to put the pieces back in the milling machine vise and make the edges nice and square. So it's going to end up in the vise anyway, so we may as well just do it this way. And it's less noisy, not as much sparks, so I have no problem with that. Okay, better get on with it. Well, we're back at the milling machine vise, and the first thing to do before we set anything up, get rid of all the chips out of here, and especially on the vice jaws. It's not a Bridgeport vise, it's a very big vise, probably too big for my machine, but I've got other ones that I'm currently fixing, so until I can get them sorted out I'll just have to use this one. And I've trammed it up a long time ago for a different job, and I haven't taken it. I'm loath to move it until another job comes along which really needs me to move this out of the way. It might actually be the one that I put on the rotary table, but for now we've got these all the same height. We need to reduce the length now, so we can put these bits next to each other on here. This is probably not the safest way of doing it actually. It would have been better if this would have been one solid piece, and then we could have been sure that it wasn't going to, or one of them wasn't going to fly out. The only reason why I've decided to do it this way and think to myself it's reasonably safe is because they're all the same width, so the vise should grip just as well on each one. But give those a good old tighten. I don't think any of those are going to move. It's pretty important to make sure that they're not going to, but there's got some pretty good grips on there. And this is just to get the length down. So I suppose the next job to do is lift this up, and we'll have to advance this in a little bit to see where we are. Drop that down onto there. I think we should be okay like that, and we'll just adjust the depth as to where we're going to go. It's out of shot at the moment, but I'm just adjusting the fairly crude depth gauge on the milling machine quill head, so that we're going down about 1 millimetre at a time. But I've got a mark on this side that I can look at, so I don't need to make too accurate a depth measurement each time. But once that's done, lift that up. I think I'll speed up a lot of the footage of me going through these and getting the sides down. Should be an interesting video. But turn everything on. I suppose I better wear my safety specs. It's not going to be too noisy, hopefully. I shan't make you go through all this. Okay, well, we've got to start at this end for the milling procedure this time, because we've got a clockwise rotation for the milling cutter, and the work is fed into that on this edge here, and it'll be the opposite for when we come back and do this edge. It'll be rotating anti-clockwise again, so we'll have to feed the work that way when we cut this edge. But I've got some black lines now, and so I should be able to see the edges. Won't get there straight away because I'm going to go in a little bit each time. So let's see if we can make some chips. Hopefully one day. Get the machine going. Yeah, we're caught with the final cut on this side now. Now I think I'll go up a little bit for the other side. Okay, we should make a pass for the other side now. And final pass. I think we're bang on the line there. Right, well that's all the milling that we should have to do. We do a lot of deburring now. The final job really will be, for this machine, will be to drill the holes where they should go. I'm hoping these will be to the right dimensions now. I did it quite rough when I could have used edge finders and made the job twice as long, but I think we're going to be reasonably okay with this result, and I think I can afford to take these out and see that they all fit before I start drilling holes, because if I have to come back and mill a few thou off each edge or something silly like that, I'd rather do it when there's a lot more steel left there rather than after I've drilled some holes. I think that's the best way to do things. So we'll just have a look to see now if they fit. Well, I'll hold my hand up and admit that they didn't quite fit straight away. I think the depth at which they were cut is fine. It's just the overall width is maybe a few thousandths too thick. So I'm going to take a tiny little cut off this side and a tiny little cut off that side. Hopefully not make a bodge of things. But we'll just have to see. I'm going to do it plainly by sight and by judgment, so we'll just have to have a bit of luck hopefully. Well, we took some off there. Can't have done too much. We'll just deburr one of these slightly to see if we're on the money. Well, it might still not fix, I might not have taken enough off. Oh, they do. Look at that. Hey! That's okay, it's not too much. So if one fits, they should all fit really. Oh, that's great. So, don't really need too much deburring, so I'm hardly taking anything off. Does that one fit? Yeah. Does that one fit? Yep. I'm glad I didn't take too much off. I wouldn't like these to be too slack. Pretty useless really. So, great, we've got some T-nuts. Excellent. Must have had the rotary table for God knows how long. So that's a job well done. It's a bit obscured, you can't really see it with that in the way. But yeah, they fit quite nice. You can probably only see that one. You can't even see that, but might as well move things out of the way. Ah, dear me. Well, that's that job finished. See if I can unlock the table. Plenty of chips about. I'll have to be taken away. So get rid of these parallels. Bit of a strange setup, but it worked. So, not the easiest thing to show you actually, but T-nuts slide in very nicely now, and that's all we need. Next thing to do would be to drill these holes in there and tap them, and we've got some T-nuts we can mess about with. So, good stuff. Well, despite the success we've had on the T-nuts, of course the final job is to drill the holes. So we're going to have to change the milling cutter piece for the normal chuck and find some suitable drills that are sharp enough to get through these things. First drill of course will be a centre drill, and I'm just going to do it by eye. There's already a line here, and it doesn't matter if I'm too far out left or right. So we'll put these back in, tighten them up, and get some holes drilled. Well, they're all back in the vise, and set them up on a parallel. I think this vise might lift a couple of thou when I'm doing certain things at the top of here, because we're not clamping anything the same width as this at the bottom. So you might find that the jaw likes to lean in a bit, or even lean out, I don't know, or it might even just rise like that. But it's accurate enough for what we're doing on these particular bits of metal. So I'm just going to do things by eye now, getting more or less the centre of each one with the centre drill. I think I'm alright for the wire position. I can fine tune that on the first hole and then lock the table. But should be okay. I'll keep going now. Well, that's the 4 holes drilled for starters. Just have to find some other ones now. Of course you have to stop and start the motor all the time because the Bridgeport doesn't have a clutch. Not the series one anyway. I'm not sure if any other ones after this one do. So I think we'll probably need something like a 4 or a 5mm drill now. Probably 4 just to get all the way through. So yeah, let's get in there. Okay, well, I know this is a new drill because I just got it from one in the pack. It's a very strange size though, 4.6mm, which I think is the tap drill size for when you want to have 5mm threads in aluminium. And you use a special type of tap, a forming tap, which looks like a bit like a bolt. But anyways, we've got 4.6mm, so we're just going to do 4 holes of this all the way through. Shouldn't be too much of a problem. Should take about a minute or so. Well, that was fairly painless, but again we're going to have to change the drill with stopping the motor, and the next one is going to be the 6.8, which is the final one for when you need to put holes for an 8mm bolt. So we'll have to lower the table a bit because the drill bit will be longer. Now this is huge now, only for 4 holes, brand new. When I put them back in the box, I always put them in separately. Or if there's no bag and all the flutes are face down, I might do the one that I've used, flutes face up, so I can wear that out before anything else. So that's that done. Time for a 6.8. You see, when I've opened that one, that's obviously the one I've been using before, because its flutes have been faced up, so I'll use that one again. Hopefully I can get that in. I'll have to open the jaws out a bit more. Yep, that's fine. Okay, tighten it up. We'll turn the motor on, but we'll perhaps go at a slightly lower speed. Well, there you go, she's done. So there are no more operations needed on this. I have to wind the table out. Got the drill down. I've not got the right speed, so it's not particularly that hot. It's quite nice and cool. Wasn't using any cutting fluid, of course. But see, flutes down. Roots up. Yeah, I wasn't using any cutting fluid. I'm going to have to sort something out in that regard. It's not for drilling perhaps fairly small holes like this, but if you're doing rather large holes and you need to make sure that you get a nice finish if you're doing milling operations too, cutting fluid is pretty essential. So now we have some 6.8 holes that are drilled in there. We can now tap these. I may use if I can find a spring-loaded point thing on that I've got here for centre, I may end up using this to centre the tap as I go through. It's not very long, so I might just do it manually in the vise, just as it is now. there's plenty of space, so I might just do it that way anyway and turn the machine off, because it's been on for a while now and I think it'd be much easier to do it manually, so we'll do it that way. Okay, I'm going to use some old trefoil. I got this for steam rolling for 50p and I may as well use it. I've got some proper stuff in the house, but I'm just going to get rid of this stuff. It's probably going to take several years to do that, but there's no longer a bad smell coming from this stuff. When I opened this for the first time, it smelled like the devil's arse, so it's okay now and it's a bit more manageable to use. So just going to put some of this in there on each one. It seems to work quite well actually. I'm glad I got it. I might have been put off by the smell at first, but it certainly worked quite well. Bit of a funny colour, but we shall give it a try. Right, some on the tap. Don't think I'm going to show you all these, just maybe one or two. Not putting any opposition up. It's not a particularly good HSS tap actually. It's really cheap carbon steel jobs. But I found that if you have the right sized hole for them, they seem to behave themselves. Now, one thing I like to do is wind it through, try and get rid of as much of the chips as I possibly can before I wind it back out. You can always clean them later. On the last hole now. Whew. Reasonably square. Yeah. I think the HSS taps would make this feel like a hot knife going through butter. I know that the difference between using a carbon steel tap when you're tapping a 16mm hole, or shall we say, I think it's a 14mm hole with a 16mm tap, and using a HSS one, there was a big difference. The HSS felt much smoother. Don't quite know why really, because it's going through the same material and it's removing the same amount of material, but it did feel a lot smoother with the HSS tap. Yeah, we'll wind it all the way through, get as much of the chips out as possible. Before we put the tap back in the box, just in general housekeeping and get rid of all the chips out of there as well. That seems to be okay. Right, so quite a cheap set, as you can be able to see, but it's done well. Only going through fairly mildish steel. Now they might leave a bit of a burr on the raised burr. Sometimes you can get rid of that by having a small chamfer. But I'm just going to go over it with the file. It should be all we need to do. But I think what I'm doing first is test that the bolts can get in. See if they're all falling down there. That seems to be okay. I think this one should be fine. A few chips in that one, might need cleaning out. Oh, shall I say it's one chip. It seems to be going out okay. I think this one's okay. Yeah, this one needs a bit of a chip in there as well. Or it might be just that raised edge at the start of the hole that's making life a bit difficult. Yeah. See, it's quite loose like that, but there's something there that's jamming it, so it's probably a thread being blocked with a little chip that we haven't got out yet. Don't think there's anything in there. Yeah, these clearly aren't that clean just yet. Oop. So we need to give these a bit of a clean up first. Probably a few chips from the tap left in there. And we've got some workable T-nuts.